Well, after the first Avengers became a pop culture juggernaut, it was only a matter of time before Marvel brought back Joss Whedon to direct a sequel. What's the worst that could happen? Everyone on set is overage and there's not that many foreigners, so he should be fine.
This feels weird. This feels wrong.
Joss said he wanted to make it an even bigger scale than the first film without rehashing the same story, looking to The Dark Knight, The Empire Strikes Back and The Godfather Part 2 as inspirations. He wanted to do something completely original, so he decided to go for an evil AI that hates humanity and wants to kill everyone, unlike the Terminator, Robocop, Eagle Eye, AI, Artificial Intelligence, The Matrix, War Games, iRobot, Westworld, Ex Machina, 2001 A Space Odyssey. Hell, he even did it in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer!
I am running out of things to say!
We know, Joss, we know.
Is it so? It is. It's so terrible.
By December 2012, Whedon had completed an outline for the script, which supposedly would have introduced the likes of Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange as additional main characters. These were all dropped as the screenplay developed due to timing and rights issues, though the characters would all be introduced later on down the line. Whedon eventually settled on including Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, as he felt that their sibling relationship would add an interesting dynamic to the proceedings. However, their inclusion in the film posed a problem. Because their comic counterparts are associated with the X-Men, who Marvel still didn't have the rights to, the characters could only be included as long as they were never referred to as mutants or by their superhero names directly.
This is insane.
Luckily, Whedon was able to work his way around the problem by changing their backstories from being mutants who were born with powers to instead being genetically experimented on in order to get revenge on Tony Stark. Because apparently everyone in this universe has beef with Tony Stark.
Yes, of course.
However, when the movie's title was announced, many were surprised as they had expected Thanos to be the main villain, given that he was revealed to have been the mastermind behind Loki's attack in Part 1 and hasn't been seen since. Joss dismissed this, saying that it was always his intention to have Thanos as an overarching threat for future movies, rather than be the immediate villain in the second film. Funny way of saying I clickbaited your asses.
Stop trying to scare us.
In regards to casting, all 6 of the main Avengers team were expected to return, but there were some issues. Robert Downey Jr.'s contract with Marvel had expired after Iron Man 3, but he eventually negotiated a new deal and was confirmed to return. So all those suits he completely destroyed at the end of his third film? Don't worry, he's back now.
Imagine that.
Furthermore, Jeremy Renner, despite enjoying his experience on the first movie, was disappointed that he didn't have more to do. Joss caught wind of this and wrote in the subplot involving Hawkeye's family in order to strengthen him as a character. But all it did was make me think, who gives a shit about Hawkeye and his stupid family? Wait a minute. That's the bitch who broke up Corey and Topanga, let me at her!
You don't think they need me?
They don't. Look at them and then look at you. You're shit.
Not a fan.
When casting the titular villain, James Spader was Whedon's only choice, but the part was originally just supposed to be a voiceover, with Ultron being realised entirely through CGI. Spader fought against this, arguing that playing the character in person would enhance both his and his co-stars' performances. The character was eventually achieved using motion capture, and a 3-foot apparatus with 2 red eyeballs was attached to Spader to represent Ultron's head. Multiple actors stated that this was incredibly distracting during filming, as they would habitually look at Spader's own face rather than the balls representing his eyes. In their scenes together, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, who plays Quicksilver, would yell at Elizabeth Olsen, "His balls! Look at his balls, Lizzie!" to get her to look in the right place. Pretty sure people aren't lining up to look at James Spader's balls, but I might be wrong.
You think this is funny?
Spader didn't need to put on a voice playing Ultron either. This is his regular speaking voice fed through a vocoder to sound more robotic. Ultron's origins were also altered from the comics, where Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, was the creator of Ultron. This was switched to Tony Stark, as Whedon felt that having a completely new character create the big bad wouldn't have been nearly as impactful.
Yeah, that's not gonna sell.
Filming ran from February to November 2014 on an insane budget of $365 million, making it to this day the second most expensive movie ever made. Yeah, behind Pirates 4! However, filming proved to be far too stressful for Whedon to handle, especially regarding the number of characters he had to juggle. It was a nightmare. They're very disparate characters. The joy of the Avengers is they really don't belong in the same room. It's not like the X-Men who are all tortured by the same thing and have similar costumes. These guys are just all over the place, and so it's tough. Honestly, this is as tough as anything I've ever done. What about trying to recover your career?
As a worst case measure.
Further problems surfaced when Scarlett Johansson became pregnant just before filming. Oh shit, we have a code red! Code red! Everybody let the pregnant woman get away from Joss Whedon! This is a warning! Everybody make an orderly exit out of the room! Let's get Scarlett to freedom!
That was
was dramatic.
Which meant that the entire shooting schedule had to be rearranged so that her scenes could be filmed first, and later scenes used CGI and 3 stunt doubles to hide her pregnant belly, while Joss called her useless and fat behind closed doors. Okay, we don't know if that bit's true, but knowing Joss Whedon, would you really be that surprised?
That I can't fix.
On top of that, the original cut of the film ran over 3 hours long, and the studio ordered Joss to cut it down to just 2.5. This, along with the rushed shooting schedule and his scripting difficulties, caused Whedon to walk away from the MCU altogether once production wrapped. Oh, don't worry, he's just going to head over to DC to make a movie that would end up being completely scrapped. But then he did Justice League that he completely destroyed. He made Buffy!
That's impressive.
Avengers Age of Ultron was released on May the 1st, 2015, and because Marvel can make more money than most countries without even trying, it was another slam dunk, grossing $1.4 billion worldwide. Slightly less than the first, but was still the 5th highest grossing movie in history at the time. Yeah, even when they don't break records, they still fart billions. However, though reviews were still positive, some felt the plot was uneven, and that the film had too many character and story threads to juggle, and that it didn't have the same wow factor as its predecessor. Furthermore, a scene between Black Widow and Hulk where the former reveals she was sterilized was heavily criticized for supposedly implying that women who are unable to have children are monsters.
You still think you're the only monster on the team?
Rumour has it that one day, the writers all went out for lunch, and a really weird, creepy British-American guy called Andrew snuck in and left his mark on the script.
It's probably not, right?
So considering the first Avengers movie took hours to really build up all of them together, and I get that now we've already seen it, this movie doesn't wait around. The very first scene is the team infiltrating a Hydra base, and I can't lie, it still looks pretty awesome, even if they turn Cap into even more of a pussy.
Shit! Language!
They do the shot again at the end, but it kind of falls flat when we already saw it immediately at the start. It is a lot to handle. There are so many characters already, so to introduce Kick-Ass here and his sister, and then Vision gets farted into existence, it's hard to keep up at times. And he makes everyone look like a pussy, which is pretty funny. And of course, Quicksilver and Wanda's parents are dead, because every fucker with superpowers has to be an orphan! It's quite sad when he sacrifices himself too. Just a shame he had to do it to save Hawkeye. But they couldn't afford some actresses to come back, so let's just write it into the script.
Miss Potts has a company to run.
Yes, I'm not even sure what country Jane's in.
The first movie's plot was already incredibly generic and cliche, but you could forgive it because it was the first time we got the group all together. It was such a big spectacle, but now we're on to part 2 and it's just as generic and cliche. Joss Whedon has always had a knack for trying to make unoriginal ideas sound creative and unique, but we have seen this plot so many times before. Ultron is even convinced that he's actually doing humanity a favour and cleansing them. So he's basically just Ra's al Ghul from Batman Begins! I mean, even the entire design of the prick is just the Terminator. There's nothing creative about it. The weird thing is, the performance makes Ultron actually somewhat interesting. He goes around ripping off other movies, but I'm at least intrigued to see what he does next. The Avengers trying to locate him, Quicksilver and his sister, I'm just not that interested in. The movie is just boring. Although Ultron does have some pretty funny moments to break superhero cliches.
What's the vibranium for?
I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to take this time to explain my evil plan.
He is a pretty intimidating villain, so even though the writing is arse, the performance is great.
And you're not going anywhere.
Of course not. I'm already there. Purge me from your computers. Turn my own flesh against me. It means nothing. When the dust settles, the only thing living in this world will be metal.
There is a pretty cool moment when he realizes Quicksilver and Wanda are actually against him, and due to the destruction they decide to fight away from civilization in order to prove that Ultron is wrong about humanity, which I have to admit is a pretty clever move. And for more cliches, Bruce now decides he doesn't want Natasha!
I adore you. But I need the other guy.
I need the old Stone Tall.
I'm honestly amazed that this movie was originally 3 hours long. It is so boring. The runtime is completely unwarranted. There are fun moments, don't get me wrong. They have a party where everyone tries desperately to lift up Thor's hammer, and Cap actually nearly manages it, which makes him panic, which is quite funny. But they don't hold back destroying civilization. Jesus Christ, DC would be jealous. And there are some genuinely great scenes, like when they're trying to save loads of civilians from a crashing train. They all join together to stop it, and it's pretty awesome. But the ending is just as generic as the rest of the film. It just becomes another movie of attacking another big army of faceless robots that we've seen countless times before. Do something new! And why is it called Age of Ultron anyway? He shows up and dies after what, a few weeks? This movie sucks! It has some cool ideas, but my god, it's boring. It's dull. The actors try to do something with it, but they can only do so much. The charm is mostly gone because they just didn't have much to work with. So the generic-ass, unoriginal, overdone story just falls flat. Age of Ultron is a completely disappointing snooze fest. Yeah, maybe Avengers 3 will be... well, we'll see.